So, I wanted to talk about uncovering pattern recognition secrets that can really save your life. And being adults, I don't think we give credence to it nearly enough, but it certainly lends a hand as we're raising the next generation. So, welcome back, everyone. This is Tech Reality with Barbara. I'm hoping this will be a longer live to give people a chance to kind of hop on in here. I did already post two recordings today. It looks like with the software that I have to do the recordings if I'm going to do a screen share. OBS is not stepping up, and we haven't gotten StreamYard to sync yet. So although there's some insights I wanted to provide today, I'm just going to read them verbally and not show them on the screen until we continue to work that out. But again, today I wanted to talk about uncovering pattern recognition that can save your life. And specifically, I'm drilling down into an extremely uncomfortable topic, that of what Aaron talks about in Mr. Let Go, tadpoles and traffic lights. So again, thank you very much for joining me and listening to this conversation. I believe that women in the United States, probably at least 8 out of 10 have faced this. And the 2 out of 10 who have not, gosh, I wish I could have lived your life. I don't know how it would happen. I don't know where it would be. As we've seen, everything is infiltrated: the schools, the churches, the medical community, neighborhoods, families. Unfortunately, it's everywhere. But this is one of those conversations that starts in one place and slowly opens up into something much bigger, we could say, or deeper. The title sounds simple: pattern recognition. And I will dig deeper into what that actually means. But when you really sit back and listen to it, you start to realize how much of your life depends on it. Now, I saw a super cute video, and I'm going to talk about this towards the end, where there was a girl just laying on the grass, and it gave the instant that she's probably laying on a nice lawn in front of her home. Not a lot of us have lawns anymore. A lot of the governments have made us remove them, and it's either been replaced with weeds now or turf, but laying on real grass. And she looked up and she said, "Mommy, come dream with me," as she looked at the clouds in the sky. And then she said, "Mommy, put down your phone." It really talks to where we're at today and to bring us back into the reality of being human. So again, the topic of pattern recognition can sound very, very simple. But when you really sit with it, you can see how much it affects our lives and how much your life depends on it. From the moment you wake up in the morning, your brain is recognizing patterns. You know how the coffee machine sounds when it's working and when it's not on. You can smell scents in the air when everything's okay, or a scent of smoke or gas when things are not okay. You know the rhythm of your neighborhood traffic. You know the difference between a normal day and the feeling that something just feels slightly off. Most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it. It's just automatic for humans. Your brain is quietly sorting through information and comparing it to things that you've already experienced. Tonight's conversation actually started with something that Aaron on the Mr. Let Go channel said quite a while ago. About 6 months ago, I think I heard the first rupture. From the very beginning, he kept bringing up this idea that TPUSA, allegedly, was related into something that he was referring to as tadpoles and traffic lights. At the time, I myself absolutely disregarded that. That was ridiculous. And many other investigators have completely avoided it. We just didn't want to touch on the topic. And most of us were focused on directly what was in front of us. How did this happen? What brought us to this point? How could this happen at all in the United States? And why is it happening again? We wanted to look at the obvious facts, the surface story, the pieces that were so easy to verify. And yet, could we talk about them publicly? But here we are now, months later, and it's becoming clear that Aaron might have been pointing out something much, much deeper, not necessarily a single event, but a pattern, a structure that only becomes visible after you step back and start connecting pieces of multiple puzzles together that didn't even seem related at first. That's how pattern recognition works. The first time you see something, it looks like a random moment or a random event. The second time you see something similar, you might just shrug it off. But by the third or fourth time, your brain starts to quickly ask questions, maybe even act defensively. Eventually, you reach a point where you can't ignore the repetition anymore. This is why reading a book by its cover is important. You bring in your experiences, your training, various things that your parents or family or school has taught you. You can tell whether or not that book is going to be interesting. Are you going to spend the next 3 days reading it? Or as a slower reader, 3 weeks? Or are you going to realize that that's not worth your time? So machines do this too. And as you know, my background is in machine learning, specifically autonomous vehicles and fintech. In machine learning, pattern recognition is essentially how the systems learn anything at all. Engineers feed a computer enormous amounts of data. The machine starts finding similarities between the examples and patching them together. It sorts them out together, the same, different in different areas. After seeing enough examples, it begins predicting what might come next. It'll predict traffic patterns. It'll predict an individual on the sidewalk, whether or not they're going to step into the roadway. What about a child on a bicycle? It'll start predicting all the different various opportunities of a trajectory for that child and see whether or not the car can continue on its trajectory. That's how image recognition works. It's how speech recognition works. Often, one person will complete another person's sentence. They're not in their mind. They just already are familiar with that individual, their thinking patterns, and they know what's going to come next. It's how self-driving car can look at a busy street and understand where the lanes are, where the pedestrians are, and when a traffic light is about to change. Traffic lights are perfect examples of pattern recognition in everyday life. Nobody stops at a red light because they sat down and logically reasoned through traffic laws in that particular moment. You stop because you've seen that pattern thousands of times before. Red light means stop. Green means go. Yellow means pay attention and get ready to stop. Act with caution. In this case, Aaron's tadpoles, as you know, are referring to a specific age group of people. Aaron's tadpoles comment actually made some people think about a similar idea. Tadpoles eventually turn into frogs. But we're looking at the younger years before they grow and age, if they ever do. It's a transformation pattern, something that starts in one form and slowly becomes something else. Something else naturally or something else via grooming. When people talk about patterns in organizations or movements, sometimes they're talking about how something becomes quietly and evolves over time into something larger and even more visible. Humans are incredibly good at pattern recognition because patterns, well, our survival depends on it. Long before modern technology existed, early humans had to recognize the difference between rustling brush caused by the wind and a rustling brush because there was an animal or a predator racing towards us. That difference could determine whether someone lived or died. The brain learned to remember details, the sound, the timing, the shape of the movement. So you see the same things in sports. A baseball player facing a fast pitch doesn't have time to analyze the physics while the ball is coming towards them. Their brain is recognizing patterns they've practiced for years. Come on in. Good to see you today. The pitcher's arm angle, the spin of the ball, the speed of the release, wind, those tiny signals allow the brain to predict where the ball will be before it even arrives. It's the same instinct that helps you avoid getting hit by a car when you cross the street. You recognize the pattern. You don't consciously calculate speed and distance every time you're about to step off a curb. Your brain is reading the movement patterns and reacting instantly. So parents teach pattern recognition to their children constantly. They may not call it that, but that's what it is. Don't talk to strangers. Look both ways before crossing the street. If someone offers you something and it feels strange, walk away. Stranger danger, stranger danger. These lessons are basically shortcuts built from experience. Adults pass them down so children don't have to learn everything the hard way. Sometimes those lessons come from very difficult stories that stay with people for decades. Now, I remember the case of JonBenét Ramsey was everywhere in the news. But what struck many people at the time wasn't just the tragedy of the case, but the larger culture conversation that it sparked. The tons of makeup, the big curls, the big dresses, age inappropriate. They were taking a child, a baby, and putting a mask on her and teaching her to perform. People became asking why a little girl was being presented in beauty pageants with heavy makeup, elaborate hairstyles, and costumes that made her look much older than she was. For many viewers, it created an uneasy feeling that something about that situation just didn't fit the natural pattern of childhood. Then years later, there were other stories that caught my attention or raised questions about pressures surrounding competition and ambition. Well, there was a cheerleading case involving a mother who became obsessed with her daughter's competitive success to an extremely shocking degree. And somebody ended up not breathing anymore. How about the attack of the Olympic figure skater that stunned sports world and revealed that as one individual hurt the legs of the other skater, how extreme rivalries could be coming up behind the scenes. Now, often we think about men that are doing wrong, but in all these cases, it was females. And it was a mother behind the situation that was guiding the child or the daughter down a specific pathway. When stories like that appear over and over again, people start noticing a theme: competition, fame, and the desire to win can sometimes push adults into behavior that most of society would not consider acceptable. So, Aaron talked about something related today when he discussed the influence that families sometimes have on the environments young people enter, generational. He mentioned examples of parents introducing children to worlds where money, fame, and influence operate very different set of rules. Whether it's entertainment industries, social media, celebrity culture, or other high-profile spaces, the same question keeps appearing: who is guiding these people into those environments in the first place? The idea that family expectation shapes life paths, well, it's not new. In generations often pass down patterns of behavior, values, and ambitions. Sometimes those patterns are healthy and supportive, but other times they create pressure that a child never asked for and will often complain about later in life. They don't look back with gratitude. There's something unnormal about that. So thinking about this brought back a memory when I was very young, sitting in the back seat of the car, kind of looking out the window. When my parents were in the front driving, and somehow, even as just a small girl, I remember hoping that somebody would see me through that window and think I was special and pave a path for me. Maybe become famous, a singer or a dancer. Maybe the movies or television, the Mickey Mouse Club. In a child's mind, fame looks like a magical doorway to a better life. I had no idea what I was asking for. And as a parent now, I look back and that's terrifying that any child of mine would even want that. As you grow older, reality becomes more complicated. You realize that every path has trade-offs, that sometimes the most important decisions you make involve stepping away from situations that don't align with who you want to be. I had a moment early in my career that really pounced on this. I worked for a company where the owner expected more intimate interactions with clients than my naive brain could even entertain. In fact, I was told in a board meeting with all my coworkers sitting at the table with me by a female company owner that I was being let go because I did not have an interaction with a client. I kind of laughed it off, but I don't remember at what age that hit me as to what that interaction was and the expectation actually was. And because I refused, not necessarily because I was refusing the action, I was just very naive, I was fired. At the time, I shrugged it off and moved on. But as I stated years later, the pattern recognition had started to grow moss on that rock. And I was starting to see all of the attempts. Power can be used in many ways that pressure people to compromise themselves, and recognizing that patterns early on can protect you from repeating the same patterns that people experience later. Pattern recognition isn't only used by people trying to protect themselves. Unfortunately, people who manipulate others often study patterns carefully. Whether they're in sales or marketing, proposing propaganda, or an FBI operative, they look for vulnerabilities, environments where supervision is low, situations where young people are searching for attention or opportunity. You know, you look around in this world at the proverbial unlabeled white van driving around giving kittens to kids. Unless we learn this from our family, did they learn it from the CIA or FBI? These behaviors are not natural among human beings. That's usually taught from somewhere. That's the reason the digital world has created new challenges. Social media allows people to present almost any identity they want. An adult as a child is over 18, a teenager online can appear older, more successful, more confident than they actually feel. And at the same time, strangers present themselves as trustworthy, caring peers, mentors, and offer exciting opportunities just because they're a little older, a little wiser, and they know how to manipulate. Children today are growing up in a space where identity is constantly shifting. Platforms reward attention. They want more eyeballs, more of your time, and attention often goes to the most dramatic and exaggerated version of the person. Jumping around, clown suit, costumes, falling off a cliff. Hey, welcome in. All of those actions attract more attention. It raises an important question for parents and communities. If kids can be online, who are they gradually becoming? And who is shaping that person? There are ongoing legal debates about the responsibilities of technology companies when it comes to protecting young users. Concerns about algorithms, targeted content, and how digital environments influence behavior have led to lawsuits, public investigations. Those discussions will likely continue for years as society tries to figure out how to balance innovation with safety. Now, right now in the news, we're still waiting for the results or the judgment from the Meta, Google, TikTok, Instagram case. Now, 2 of the 4 bowed out and decided just to pay off. But this case still moved forward, and we're waiting for the decision. Sometimes the most powerful response is surprisingly simple. Encourage kids to spend time outside. Let them climb trees, ride bikes, explore parks, swim in lakes, and build friendships that exist in the physical world instead of on screens. Remember when we were younger, you were kicked outside with a bike, or what were those little plastic things you would pedal on? Go play until the sun goes down. When children play and explore freely, they learn common sense. They have to, on their own, learn who they can trust and who to avoid. And they develop a kind of intuition that no algorithm can replace. And you know what? They learn how to read expressions. Remember that time not so far back where our expressions were covered? We had to wear a mask that covered our face and even limited expression of our eyes. This is paramount for babies to learn if somebody is happy with them or angry with them, what they're actually asking for, and whether they can trust them. And that was blocked for 4 years in my county. Many people today, especially if you step in a library, are still covering their faces. Yet we need this to survive. Through this, you can learn to recognize when someone is trustworthy and when something feels wrong. They learn the rhythm of the natural world, how weather changes, how animals behave, and how to listen to your own gut instincts, which has absolutely been stripped from this upcoming generation. All the lies that they were given about wearing a mask, trusting people they don't believe, going to government indoctrination camps, getting injected. It goes on and on and on. Pattern recognition grows stronger through real experience. And at the end of the day, technology may be able to analyze enormous data sets and identify statistical patterns faster than any human mind, but human beings still possess something machines struggle to replicate. We understand context. We feel emotional signals. We remember personal experiences that shape how we interpret this world. Those experiences help us notice when something doesn't fit the pattern that we expect. And sometimes noticing that difference early is exactly what keeps us safe. So I wanted to look at one of the most recent videos that Aaron posted on his channel, Mr. Let Go, as a title, Proof That Donald Trump Was Paid to Attack Iran by, and then he's got some videos up that he's showing and he's talking about as he relates to Operation Epic Fury is a disaster. And this was posted, you know, on some of these YouTubes, they even remove the date that it's posted. This says that it looks like it was updated 2 days ago, and we're at March 15th right now. So there's a question here. Why is this MAGA president who stood stating no new wars, blasting everybody on behalf of a specific country? What has happened to change his mind, to manipulate him and possibly blackmailing him? Now, I don't know that blackmail exists here because I believe that that would have come up in one of the last 3 election cycles around him. But I do believe that the threats are real. And the removal of Charlie was a silencing factor. And it was twofold, because the hit to the ear was just grabbing his ear for attention. And I believe that was a setup. But as we look at Charlie lined up with his children, with Trump's children, there seemed to be a respect there and a listening. And as we've seen many reports come out that Charlie had urged Trump in the Oval Office to avoid moving forward with Iran. Even Tucker Carlson came out and mentioned this. Let's see that. Okay. it looks like there we go. September 13th, in fact, many news articles came out, and even Carlson started talking about what a righteous man that walked with integrity Charlie was, and revisited the conversations that Charlie had had with Trump. On September 12th, Carlson was on the Megyn Kelly show, and Tucker Carlson told Megyn that Charlie went to the Oval Office to speak against war with Iran, and his donors sent him intense messages that Tucker claims Charlie showed him. He saw them. You speak against the narrative of the war machine, and there's lessons to be paid. As my prior recording today talked about the now Farah allegations against Tucker, as Tucker refuses to step back. But as you look at the screenshot for Mr. Let Go, and you just click on live, there's home, video, shorts, and then live, you can see what he's been talking about here. And today, he had a live video. It lasted about 90 minutes, I think almost 2 hours possibly. And he talked about the ex-madam from New York who explained the audio recording that came out this week that has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. However, she talks about how this pattern comes together. She talked about how it makes sense that P. Diddy's mom allegedly brought him into the world, not giving birth, but the world that he got busted for. And how the pressures, as she primarily worked with in New York, this lady primarily worked with people from Eastern Europe who were brought to the United States, housed in apartment buildings, many to a room. Most of their checks, if they got them at all, was taken in order to pay for that apartment and food and whatever else that somebody wanted to steal from their paycheck. And in order for them to get work, they had to do favors. And the only way to get out of favors was to bring somebody else in instead to take your place, which is what they related allegedly to the conversation as Usher bringing in Justin. So related to this recording that has now been supposedly debunked, which is odd, we heard a common familiar voice that's very unique, bringing in other women. Was it to replace her activities? We don't know the extent of it. That is still being explored, and obviously not having to do with that because it's unrelated, as we're needing to say. But this rabbit hole goes a lot deeper than most of us had thought and wanted to admit. And the conversation that the madame talks about didn't end during her time of helping people. Now that she's moved on, and those women who had aged out because they had been used for a decade, now wanted to go into offering their body in exchange for money because they've been doing it for free for so long, but now we're too old. At 25, she gave them a new breath of life to be able to continue that pattern, but get more money in their pockets. She was their pimp. She's now moved on, and she said that she's still well known, and politicians and high-level businessmen still call her and ask if she can bring the girls to her party. Is this just what men are? As I was raised to stay away from people with money, being told that they were greedy and evil and crooked and had to be connected in order to get that wealth. That would be a pattern recognition that was taught to me. And knowing or unknowingly, I've followed that path to keep myself safe. to follow that pattern recognition. So as Mr. Let Go talks about this, he also talked about something very interesting today. He had Allie on, and she was asking about the heart that he has on one of the boxes that he offered her. And it's a heart with stitches down the middle. And he explained it so eloquently. When hearts are stitched back together, they're not made whole. It's not perfect. There's always more healing to be done, and that scar is always there. I mean, we've all gone through the point in our lives where we've had our heart broken. And for many of us, it's been shattered so much, we'll never find the pieces. And yet, as he tries to say, to heal those hearts, he acknowledges that the stitching there still exists, and those wounds will always be there, will always need to be healed. So I go back to the conversation that nobody wanted to talk about. Pattern recognition is important. Judging a book by its cover is part of a gut response we have, the nature versus learning being brought together. In this digital world, patterns can be found all around us. They can be seen physically in the colors of our clothing or the rhythm of speech. I found this in a geeksforthegeeks.org organization, where they talk about what pattern recognition actually is and how it's used with machine learning, classification, and clustering. Pattern recognition possesses the following features. A pattern recognition system would recognize familiar patterns quickly and accurately, recognize and classify unfamiliar objects, accurately recognize shapes and objects from different angles, and identify patterns with objects even when partially hidden or obscured. Talks about how to train machines and examples of the pattern, the advantages and disadvantages of making assumptions. But this is of image processing, computer vision, seismic analysis, radar signals classification, speech recognition, fingerprint identification, license plate reading, medical diagnosis, autonomous vehicle use. It's used everywhere. But we have forgotten as human beings the value of uncovering that pattern recognition as a survival mechanism for ourselves. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's got to be a time where, just like that little girl, we lay on the grass, feeling the actual true grass around our skin, and we look up at the clouds, and we can have pattern recognition as we see the different types of clouds travel at different speeds and clump together like a turtle or a dog or a bunny, and laugh and roll in nature as we get to be children and we train the next generation. It's not about social media. It's not about a virtual reality game. It's about you. This is your life. Welcome to it. Enjoy, learn, and play with people who are learning and enjoying and playing at your same age group, right alongside you. Let's teach our children to judge, to read books by their cover, to know what's good for us, and to, as Kenny Rogers would have said, know when to walk away and know when to run. This world is getting serious. The war is lit. What are we at now? 17 different countries on fire. Let's come together and be children once again. Train the next generation so they don't make the same mistakes we do. Let's learn to love again. Heal our hearts. Stitch them if we need to, and take that next step. How does pattern recognition apply to your life, to your career, to your family? How does it keep you safe? Survival. And what from pattern recognition are you teaching your children? Have a great evening. We'll talk soon. Bye.